Hello, so today I'm going to go through some of the Oracle Think Tank cards that have been revealed recently. I've done a reaction video a little while ago, but this time round I'm just going to go through some of my thoughts after having a bit of a thought around since then. Of course, initially you can have a bit of a different outlook than after letting things sink in, which is why you should never ever react to reveals and just call cards garbage, or oh, this is terrible, without actually trying them first maybe. And so let's go with the first card, which is Sai, which I think is a very interesting card. In fact, I actually think I like Sai more now than back when it was initially revealed. Of course, it's a free card, so there's no counterblast cost required, which makes it a bit more easy to activate. But then the other thing that's really cool about it is that you're running Crescent Moon Sukumuri, so now you've got a method in V Premium, where you can use a second target to hit into Crescent Moon on your turn 1. It's also a rewrite, unlike Akizuki from the premium format. Akizuki is that grade 2, you can discard itself to ride Crescent Moon. The thing is with Sai is that you can soul charge because you're riding her and then you ride Crescent Moon, which can be helpful for meeting soul blast requirements later on. Not just that, but her second skill, which requires the opponent being grade 3 or greater, can soul charge a unit from your field, which is also another way to gain soul. So Sai is a very good soul charge engine to play. It is a neg1 to use the skill, the second skill that is, but the payoff can be quite good if you're aiming for a finisher play, which is to check the top 2 and then you can stack them to top or bottom. So it's a bit more for turbo stacker compared to other cards we've had in the past. And the neg 1 of the cost isn't too big a deal sometimes, because you may be calling units anyway for their skill but not actually being able to attack with them. Maybe you have an abundance of grade 2 or greaters. Maybe you decided to call Kuroi Kazuchi but you have some other unit already in front of it, so you just use Kuroi Kazuchi's skill, maybe activate trigger, then move to soul afterwards. But of course it's still going to have some sort of detriment in the long term if you're looking to play a long game. But it's always good to have access to these sort of finish plays as well with Sai. And of course it does require the opponent being grade 3. But that's not too bad because in OTT you don't really win games on turn 3 that easily anyway, and with the new Heal Guardians that are coming out, there's going to be lesser chance of that now. So something like Oracle Think Tank is going to have a harder time, even with the more aggressive versions like, say for example, Susano. They might have a harder time as well trying to kill someone with the new Heal Guardians because they can reduce crits by 2. So it's always good to have like a solid mid game as well, and that's what Sai can do for you. So I think very good card overall. You can play it in either deck. Even in Premium you can play it as one of 12 Crescent Moon targets. It doesn't even have to be used in a Sukumuri deck, mind you, because Sukumuri, unlike the old Ride Chain, it only checks the top 5, but it can add anything you want. Whereas the old Sukumuri has to add an old Sukumuri card, one of the Sukumuri pieces. So there's none of that specific stuff anymore, which means you can just splash it. So you could just kick out Full Moon and go for Susano if you wanted to. Actually, to be fair, old Sukumuri did used to be splashed with other grade 3s back in the day as well, but it just wasn't as good as right now, which can give you a bit more control advantage because you're adding anything rather than just adding a Ride Chain piece. So overall, Sai's a very good card and helpful in both formats, Premium and V Premium. Helpful in quite a lot of decks actually as well. So it's not really Sukumuri support. It's good in Sukumuri obviously, don't get me wrong, but you can play in other decks if you're willing to play the Sukumuri engine. Next we have Frio, which is the grade 2. It's a counterblast 1 when placed on Vanguard or Rearguard. So I think this would be like the first on-place Vanguard skill that actually lets you draw without a condition or a catch to it. So you may have seen other clans, they've all got grade 2s that have on-ride to draw, but Oracle Think Tank hasn't really had that. Maiden of Libra, that's a good example of an on-ride +1, but that was quite conditional because, well, it's not on-ride, it's actually on boost. So you have to neg 1 from your hand, you have to call a booster behind it, which is even worse in V Premium, because in V Premium you don't have access to triggers that you can make use of to plus back, for example Psychic Bird or Efficient Carp. So you have even less ways of finding targets to use as boosters without it biting you hard. But then another thing as well is that Maiden of Libra isn't on place either to draw, so your +1 is lagged by later, which is a weakness in of itself. But then, that being said, Frio is kind of revolutionary in a sense because this is the first time we've had an on-place Counter Blast on Vanguard draw card. So that's a big deal. There is something to look out for though, because after that draw, you do have to stack a card from the drop zone to top of your deck. So while in the early game, a lot of the times it's fine for an on-ride, except when you're playing Sukumuri in Premium, because if you discard Akizuki to ride Crescent Moon Sukumuri, then now you've got a drop zone, so you're forced to stack the card on top of your deck. But other than that, a lot of times you're not going to have a drop zone anyway, so it should be fine in that regard. You could play it in a non-Sukumuri deck, just like with Sai, as I was explaining earlier. So Frio is pretty generic actually, but it's also very handy to Susano because now you've got some on-ride defense stability if you wanted that. And also another thing as well is that if your opponent's grade 3, you do soul charge top card, so that's really good in Susano as well. Not just the fact that you've got now an on-ride draw stability card, but also the fact that you can soul charge grade 3s. You could use something like Amano Murakumo, search Amaterasu, discard it, and then you can just put it back on top with Frio. So it's got a bit more for later game use. And then you can just soul charge it, use Susano's skill, drive check 3. So that's very handy as well. And of course there's the whole thing with Sukumuri, we can just soul charge Sukumuri pieces, but that's kind of obvious anyway. Next up, the Sukumuri card, grade 3. So this one's my least favourite actually between the three. So Frio and Sai I do find a lot more useful overall across both formats. Sukumuri I feel is a very interesting card. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike her or anything. To each their own really. Like, one of the things I do love about this game is that you can basically just play whatever you want. You do have the freedom. You can build decks around strategies you like, and you can experiment with things. And it's not all just about simply winning. It's more about just playing around various different bits out there, and that's kind of one of the appeals I'm finding with this set actually. But Sukumuri, it's a Counter Blast 1 cost, which I think is a bit of a drag. There are people saying just play Amaterasu. It's not that simple, because if you're looking at a Sukumuri deck, a lot of the cards are mainly just reveal based. Sorry, not reveal. Look at the top card. They're not reveal based like the Susano deck, which Susano himself does. Kuroikazuchi would do. Of course, you can always play Kuroikazuchi in Sukumuri if you wanted to, but that's a bit weaker compared to playing a Susano deck. And there's Ichikishima as well, but how many of you are really looking to play Ichikishima? Like, I've noticed not many people seem to like that card. I personally like it, but I know overall it's not a very popular card. You can't really make use of God of the Sun Amaterasu as much outside of a Susano deck. It would be less synergistic, but of course it is free, which is a good thing, unlike Sukumori-kan. Sukumori-kan is the Nubatama stride. So Sukumuri, that is a weakness, the whole Canvas thing. But other than that, it's a very interesting card. I really do like it. I appreciate its existence, to be honest. Like, I really love that it exists. So I don't want to come across as knocking the card or anything. The drive check ability is really cool. Anyway, like 10k in a crypto Vanguard and counting itself as a trigger. It's not a Vanguard based skill at all. Like, that's just such a refreshing thing to see. And you know, it's always going to be on people's minds with deck building. But don't get it twisted either. It's not like it's useless or anything in more ways, because it's not. There are decks that I do think will be useful in. Obviously, Sukumuri itself, in V Premium specifically. I wouldn't really be as inclined in the Premium format. The reason being is because there's a lot of options in Premium. And one of the grade 3s I'd be more inclined to play is actually Harazuki, which is another G-era Sukumuri support card. It's the one that lets you draw a card when you discard it for the stride cost. It also gives a noble unit 5k power on hit. Recycle a grade 3 from your drops into hand. So in Premium I'll probably have issues with finding space in that sense. But I think in V Premium it's really good because you can combo with Sukumuri. You do have more of a chance of finding your 2 triggers, which will then give you a front row 10k, and you really need that in V Premium because there isn't really as much aggressive options anyway. So I think in V Premium it's a very good card, but not as much in Premium format. Because in Premium format you have other things you can rely on, and one of the things I think that does take away from it is Ichikishima, the stride this time we're talking about, because the Ichikishima stride kind of makes some cards kind of less needed in a way, because you can just play into the Ichikishima strategy. So you don't really need to rely as much on your grade 3 boss units. And if you're not relying on your grade 3 boss units, like Sukumuri in this case, then that diminishes the value of Sukumuri. So there's always that. And now we've got Tempest Sphere. It's kind of easy to turn on First Strike Ichikishima with that. And the Sukumuri Raichin can check top 5, so you do have a way of finding the Tempest Spheres. So yeah, I think overall it's good. I'm happy with the support for Oracle Think Tank, really happy. I really like it. I rate it highly. I think the grade 1/2s were very needed cards. That's the Oracle Think Tank ramble. Just some food for thought, really. Just want to talk about that. I'm also going to be talking about Genesis as well, which I'll get to recording soon. Anyway, until then, I'll see you later. Goodbye.